I mean, not unlike Bigfoot, not showing up on game cams and things, but yeah, like you say, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter if you have a photo. It's still, there's too much debate about that and too easy to fake, and the debate will rage on. So probably
that's right. A photograph. I mean, I'm very, as far as paranormal research goes, I'm very fascinated by, some of I work a lot with full spectrum photography and things like that. But it's really for my own personal research, because the reality is that, if you're researching in this field and you're trying to catch a photograph, do it for your own purposes and your own research, because, a believer doesn't need a picture and a skeptic's never going to accept one.
Yeah, I think if I got a picture of something, be it a Bigfoot or whatever, I'd be reluctant to put it out there because it would just be totally slammed,
Right.
Even if it was completely, legit. So, yeah, it'd be photos. And maybe for that reason, some people have photos that they've never released because they don't want to have to answer the questions or be subject to that, because...
Abuse.
The abuse, yeah. I mean,
yeah.
which it can be ridiculous. I've seen some of these forums and chats, and everybody leaving the anonymous stuff. It's like, come on, it's not. That is wasted energy.
Yeah, it is. It is.
But I guess I should say, if anybody has questions, you can. Enter those into the chat room, and we can get those to David to answer your questions. You can also call in on the toll-free number, 1-888-919-2355. That's 888-919-2355. David will entertain any kind of question from, black-eyed kids or anything else. Chupacabras, perhaps, if you would like to ask him about cryptids. He's very knowledgeable on all subjects. It seems, it's funny how Chupacabra always comes up. We're on radio shows together. We've been guests on shows, and it's like it's the Chupacabra synchronicity. I don't know. It's funny, but there it is. I threw it into the radio show. We couldn't go a whole radio show without throwing the word chupacabra in there.
It was bound to come up. I mean, we appeared together in Sacramento at the conference, and it, kept coming up there. And yeah, it's one of those weird things. A fascinating cryptid, though. A very fascinating cryptid. As you and I have discussed in great detail, it's rare that there's a creature like this that has two very distinct manifestations, because we have the original chupacabra, which was bipedal and appeared initially in Puerto Rico with the large, oversized eyes and the spikes coming off the back and, the tiny little forearms. And then, of course, we have the sightings of chupacabra that are rampant all across the South, from Texas and New Mexico and Arizona to even Florida and California. And,
right.
Those are a whole different. Those are a tainted type of cryptid that a lot of people believe, some kind of mutation, or you hear all the normal arguments. Oh, it's a coyote with mange, or it's a half-breed wolf coyote, or I don't know. It's intriguing, and the sightings just don't stop. I mean, you and I just heard one earlier from Chicago, of all places.
Right. Yeah. It's one of those fascinating things. I think the chupacabra, has, it caught on in the media as well, and I think that's what attributes to the term being cast upon different animals that are described in a different way, and of course, the early descriptions almost had that kind of extraterrestrial creature description to it, and then you get down to the sort of sightings in Texas, which just sort of reduce it to this mangy dog, and so be it. Whatever it is, it's still an interesting story, and that's what I always gravitate to is, it's an interesting story that warrants some investigation and perhaps a book or something someday or whatever. But but
you never know, do you?
you never know. So I mean, I'm sure fans of David Weatherly would like to know: are you if you have any plans, or are you currently working on any new books, and what might those be?
Yeah, there's a whole bunch of projects in the works, actually. There's a book I've been working on for a while on the subject of tulpas and thought forms. And there's another subject that sort of crosses into a lot of different territory. We don't really have time to go into it too in depth right now, but it's something that I heard about and had some experience with very in the early 90s. And, of course, John Keel himself, who we've mentioned several times today, talked about the idea of tulpas, has an explanation for some of the strange creatures that show up. And for people who aren't familiar with the term tulpa is Tibetan, and it roughly equates to what we in the West would call thought form. However, in Eastern lore, a tulpa actually goes through more stages and starts off as a simple thought form in the mind, but advances all the way into fully physical form. So it's a very fascinating area. I talk about it a little bit in the Black-Eyed Children book because there is, once again, some correlation between what these Black-Eyed Children manifest and tulpas. Tulpas feed off of emotional energy. And oddly enough, with these Black-Eyed Child encounters, it almost appears that the entire goal of the encounter is to create this dramatic, intense level of emotion, which, is always fear from people. And once that sort of peak has been reached, these kids disappear. And, to me, that raises a lot of questions. And I look at that pattern and think, okay, they disappear when the person is absolutely terrified. Why is that? Was that their goal to begin with? Is that what they were there to accomplish?
Right. Cool. Hey, I think we got some questions coming in here on the feed. So let me throw a few of these at you. How have you learned about the sightings of these Black-Eyed Children? Did the witnesses come to you? Are the cases found on the web? How did you obtain their statements? And are the witnesses named in your reports? Okay. You got that? You got that? Go. You got 5 seconds.
Yeah. The whole variety of ways. I mean, obviously I met Paul in person, and at that point, I started looking at cases that were, I have a network of investigators. I sort of put the word out to everybody. Listen, if you get any kind of case that, resembles anything like this, please get in touch with me. Please get me in touch with the person. Over the years, now a lot more people are just outright coming forward, obviously through the internet and, some of my radio appearances and things like that. And at this point, there are a few other people out there, too, that are investigating the phenomena and are, kind of open to people approaching them. So as more people get comfortable with the idea that, wow, other people have encountered these black-eyed beings, then they're more comfortable with, coming forward with their own stories. But I'm kind of an old-school investigator. I like to sort of plug into communities and, just talk to people and, get on comfortable terms and start digging after that for the stories. And over the years, I've lived in a lot of different places, so have a pretty solid network for finding things like that.
Right on. Here's another good question. Did you ever hear of the snake-eyed kids?
I've heard a couple of those stories, but not. I don't think that's anything that's very widespread. Now in modern days, we get into these. One of the things I actually researched from the skeptical side of things in the book was the contacts that you can buy that are full eye contacts. And, I actually went to an event and talked to a lot of people that were wearing the things and talked to some people who deal with these things just to explore the possibility of a hoax to see if there's anything like that. But so you really have to look at those cases and find as much details as you can. And I've heard a couple of cases about these kids that have, snake-like eyes, but then you hear other weird cases too about, reptilian hybrids, and it's amazing what's out there when you start digging. It really is.
Yeah, I looked at some of that reptilian hybrid stuff in relation to some of my research on a swamp book I was working on, and you can just go in all sorts of directions, and who knows? And of course, you got your hands full with kids with totally black eyes. You start throwing in kids that have snake eyes. It's
right.
It's like Vegas over here, Well, we had a incoming call, but they hung up. So I guess the question wasn't critical. So we'll just. But any more questions? Just feel free to put them in the chat room or call in, and we can get those. Again, the call-in number was 888-919-2355. We're here with David Weatherly, author of The Black-Eyed Kids. I'm your host, Lyle Blackburn, on my maiden voyage as a radio host. So anyways, let's see, where were we before we answered those questions? You were talking about things you were working on. Did we cover that in detail enough? Or?
Yeah, there's the tulpa. The book on tulpas should hopefully be out later this year, and it's just kind of I'm sure you understand, a juggling act at this point. I've got a couple of video projects in the works. I've got another book that's sort of in the works with a co-author, and there's radio shows and appearances. Of course, I've still got a couple of big events to attend this year at the end of this month. In fact, I'll be at Scarefest in Lexington, Kentucky, and I know you'll be there too. Get a chance to hang out some, and that's just a massive paranormal / horror convention. That's it's it's like the paranormal version of Vegas or something, I think, because it's,
yeah,
craziness contained in a convention center for 3 days, and
it's a really great event because I do a lot of the horror conventions because my book, The Beast of Boggy Creek, kind of crosses over into that kind of thing.
Right.
But this is a case where you've brought together all kinds of cool stuff in one roof. You got the whole paranormal. Isn't Josh Gates one of the speakers?
Oh my gosh, yeah, Josh Gates. Almost the whole cast of GHI, Ghost Hunters International. Let's see, Nick Groff from Ghost Adventures. Chip Coffey.
Anthony Sanchez.
Anthony Sanchez, our friend who wrote UFO Highway. So just a whole incredible lineup. And then in October, I'm very honored to be a speaker at the Paradigm Symposium in Minneapolis, and that event. Scarefest is just going to be kind of a wild, almost party type of atmosphere. Paradigm Symposium is just going to be an incredible event. It's they're going to have Eric von Däniken, who hasn't been in this country in something like 10 years. He's coming over to speak, and he's a real icon in the field of ancient aliens in particular, and the paranormal in general, I think. And a lot of people from the Ancient Aliens television series, like Bill Burns, Philip Copens, Georgie Tsoukalos, the guy with the hair, has everybody recognized.
Yeah. Hey, yeah, you get something that people remember, right?
That's right. Yeah, he's unforgettable, that's for sure. But yes, it's just an incredible lineup of people that are going to be at that event, and that can be found. That's being put on by IntrepidMagazine.com. Scotty Roberts and Micah Hanks, guys from Intrepid Magazine and the Graylian Report. And,
right, those
really
guys
nice
are.
Guys.
Yeah, but they're trouble.
Yeah.
Yeah, we David and I were in Sacramento earlier this year at a conference out there put on by Anthony Sanchez. That was a good time, and Micah and Scotty were there, and Yeah, but yeah, these events are great, and I hope people try to support those, even if you have to drive a while. I mean, it's worth it. You know, these are, you can meet these people in person, you can learn a lot, you can network, and you know, you could potentially hang out with me and David, and we could talk, you know, chupacabras, and we can have a good time. So these events are just really great. You know, it's like a lot of this work is spent on the radio shows or behind computer or something. So it's cool to get out and socialize. And so yeah, definitely look for these events, the Paradigm Symposium and Scare Fest coming up,
Right.
and try to make those.
And if you're listening and you have a chupacabra story, contact me or contact Lyle. We'd love to hear it.
Yes, yeah, definitely. But we just got to keep rolling with that, right? So awesome. You know, of course, if you've encountered any children with black eyes, be sure to notify David, because you know, I'm sure you're like me. I mean, I've written a book on the Boggy Creek phenomenon, but once you do these things, it's a lifelong passion. You know, you're going to follow the report, so it's not something you just sort of, oh, I'm done with that book. We may be moving on to other projects, but certainly you want to keep up with the phenomenon, you know, and follow it as you keep researching down the line. So yeah, definitely. Hopefully, more people will come forward with their black-eyed kid story, and you can put those into the database and evaluate the patterns and get closer to maybe some explanation, but if that's possible.
Right, and some of those, you know, I do, occasionally I'll post some of the new encounters on my blog. There was one a while back that I found particularly intriguing that actually is from your neck of the woods, Lyle. It's from the Dallas metro area, and it's just it's a weird case for a couple of reasons, but the thing that really stood out to me was that there was a dog present during this particular encounter. And what happened was this fellow came home. He had been to the supermarket, so he came home. He had a couple of plastic bags in his hand, and you know, he was in a small house, and his yard is completely clear. You know, they don't have any trees or anything, and he's walking up the steps and puts his hand on the door, and just as he does, he suddenly realizes that there's this kid standing there, you know, to the right of the steps, and swears this kid wasn't there before. This kid just seemed to have appeared, you know, suddenly, or maybe he just suddenly realized this kid was there. He couldn't quite figure that out, but you know, he had opened the door, and he turns and looks at this kid, and you know, sure enough, it's this black-eyed child. And this really creeped me out the first time I heard it, because this kid looks at the man, and he says, "Is it food time?" And, you know, again, here's the awkward, you know, use of language. Nobody speaks like that. You know, is it food time? And, you know, the kid sort of repeats it. He says something like, you know, I think it's food time. You should invite me in. And what happens as this is unfolding is that this gentleman had, the door had sort of swung open. He has hardwood floors throughout his house. He has a 3-year-old pit bull that he raised from a pup that he hears barking towards the back of the house, and he hears this dog running. He sees the dog, when he opens his door, there's a long hallway, so he sees the dog turn the corner, charging down that hallway towards the front door. When the dog gets fairly close to the front door, this animal tries to put the brakes on. And, you know, I'm sure we've all seen that, at least in, you know, like cartoons and stuff, this animal all of a sudden trying to stop on a slick surface, and this dog literally fell over itself out onto the steps, turned around, got up and turned around as quick as it could, tail between its legs, head down, whimpering, running back into the house, all the way into the house, and hid under the bed in the master bedroom. This gentleman, you know, he quickly goes in his house and slams the door on this kid, goes and checks a few moments later through, you know, looking through one of the windows, and doesn't see any sign of this boy anywhere. But this dog that he had raised, he had watched this dog face down rattlesnakes, and had never seen this dog back down from anything or be afraid of anything. And all of a sudden it's hiding under the bed and he can't get it out. So something terrified this dog in a way that just the animal couldn't even comprehend. And it was just one of the weirder cases that I've heard in recent times.
Wow. Yeah, that is strange when you have the animal in there as well. We're getting close to the end, and I'm starting to see some more questions coming across. So I definitely want to try to get to these. So, let me throw a couple of these at you. I guess give them a short answer. One of them is, what is the most reasonable conclusion you've come to regarding the black-eyed kid's motive for wanting to enter someone's home?
Well, again, this is something that could be argued a number of ways. On a personal level, I'm going to, reflect back on what I was talking about earlier, in that it seems to me, from looking at so many cases, that the actual goal of these encounters are to create this intense level of fear. It's almost like they're feeding on that energy somehow. There are other people who would argue with some good arguments that these kids are actually some type of omen, and that's covered in the book quite a bit too. There are a lot of victims of these encounters who immediately after having the kids show up will have very negative things happen in their life. A family member will pass away, or they'll lose their job, or their relationship will fall apart. And it's hard to ignore when you have a lot of people who are saying, I encountered these things, a lot of very disturbing negative things happened to me afterwards. It appears that they are some type of omen, at least part of the time.
Right. Not an easy question to answer as to, motive behind something like that. So, but yeah, I mean, it's certainly the phrasing and what they say, the motive does not sound good. Let us in.
Right.
It'll only take a moment. I mean, that phrase right there. I'm not really one to find out what the motive is at that point. So, obviously, here's another good question, which we definitely probably want to try to address here, because the reports that we're giving on the air right now lack specific names, locations, and times. The stories seem to come across as mere tall tales. In the book, are there more specifics about these people and their locations?
I don't give out the particular names of these people, because these are people that frankly don't want to be harassed. They don't want a million people knocking on their door asking them about their black-eyed kid encounter. So, while I use first names and actual locations and details about the encounters, I certainly don't give information for, this is where you can contact this witness.
Right.
That would be that would be unreasonable, I think. I frankly don't think any paranormal investigator should, write a book and do that, just because, especially now with the popularity of the paranormal, that would open up, so many difficult things. I know that locations, for instance, if you watch a lot of the shows, the ghost hunting shows, if it's a private residence, they're not giving you the actual location of that residence. That's unreasonable. Obviously, if it's a historic site, then they're going to give it out. And guess what? Those places get inundated with, ghost hunters of every degree, from professional to amateur, coming to check it out because it's on television.
Right. And let me just say, as a reader of the book, it doesn't come across as tall tales. I mean, you can tell that David's put in the time and effort, that he's accurately relaying these stories, and it's not something that are made up, other than giving the full name, which you just can't do in this case. It doesn't come across that way. It's definitely a very good book, and I urge you to check it out. if you're interested in these type subjects, and it's a very refreshing read. It's an easy read, and certainly is the definitive guide to this phenomenon. So we still got a few minutes. So won't you give out a plug for where people can find the book, how they can purchase it online, and so forth?
Yeah, sure. The best place to get it is leprechaunpress.com. If you'd like a signed copy, it's available through Leprechaun Press. It's also on Amazon.com, and you can follow my personal work and research by going to TwoCrowsParanormal.blogspot.com. That is TWOCROWS paranormal.blogspot.com. I post stories of the whole range of the paranormal on there, and there's also a badge for my Facebook. I welcome people to friend me on Facebook or follow my Twitter feed, which is also on there. And you can catch me at some of these events that we were talking about earlier, Scarefest in Lexington, Kentucky, and the Paradigm Symposium in Minneapolis.
That's right. It's a good place to get an autograph, a personal autograph that way, of course, if you can catch David at one of his live appearances. And, definitely Leprechaun Press. Go check it out. Order a copy of the book. It's definitely a good read. And, so I guess we're about the end of the road. This has been Lyle Blackburn as your host. And if you'd like to know more about me or know more about my book, The Beast of Boggy Creek, just go to lyleblackburn.com or just Google Lyle Blackburn. I'll come right up at the top of the list. So check out more on my work. And we really appreciate you having you on the show tonight, David. It's been a very informative and interesting conversation.
My pleasure, man. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, you bet. And keep in touch. And hopefully we look forward to future books. And I guess next time I'll see you will be in Kentucky. Don't forget to bring my books, man.
Oh, yeah, I'll take care of it.
Yeah, that's another story, but for another time. But all right, man. Well, thanks so much. Enjoyed it.
Sounds good, man. Have a good one.
All righty.
Thank you for being with us tonight. Please join us again next Monday evening for Extraordinary Phenomena Investigations Council's Epic Voyages. I'm Roger Peacock for Epic. Until next time.